fame, fortune, and heartache are the heart of country music. For these icons, the real drama didn't end when the music stopped. In fact, that's when the wildest truths were finally revealed. We're counting down the 16 most shocking things we learned after these old country stars died, and some of them are truly unbelievable. 1. Hank Williams. Everyone knows Hank Williams as the sad-eyed grandfather of country music, a genius songwriter who wrote classics like Your Cheatin' Heart and I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. His music defined a whole genre, and his life was famously full of turmoil and heartbreak. He passed away at the young age of 29, and for decades, the story was that he succumbed to his hard-living lifestyle in the back of his famous baby blue Cadillac on the way to a gig. That much is true, but the really crazy details of his final hours were a tangled mess that only became clear years later. The truth is, Hank's final journey was pure chaos. The man traveling with him, who gave him the substances that contributed to his passing, was not a real doctor. He was a man named Horace Marshall, a convicted forger who had bought his medical degree and was hired to keep Hank in shape to perform. Believe it or not, the driver of the Cadillac was just a 17-year-old college student named Charles Carr, who had been hired to drive the music legend through a winter storm. For hours, Carr drove on, thinking Hank was just sleeping in the back seat. The discovery that he had passed away was a grim, lonely scene at a gas station in West Virginia. The aftermath revealed a story not just of a man's personal struggles, but of a circle of people around him who were either unable or unwilling to save him from his demons. It was a tragic, messy end that was far more complicated than the simple story fans knew for years. If you think the mystery around Hank's final ride is wild, wait until you hear about the country queen whose own daughters questioned how she really left this world. 2. Tammy Wynette. Tammy Wynette was the first lady of country music. With her powerful voice and songs like Stand By Your Man, she sang about heartache and devotion with a strength that resonated with millions. She was a survivor, having gone through multiple difficult marriages and health problems, but she always seemed to persevere. When she passed away in 1998 at the age of 55, the official cause was listed as a blood clot in her lung, a sad but seemingly straightforward end for someone with her history of health issues. Her husband and manager, George Ritchie, was by her side. But here's the kicker. Years after her passing, a bombshell dropped. 3 of Tammy's daughters came forward with shocking suspicions. They were never comfortable with the official story. They believed that Ritchie had been overly controlling of their mother's life and her powerful pain medications. They worried that his actions might have contributed to her early demise. The situation became so intense that they took the unbelievable step of having their mother's body exhumed for a new autopsy. While the new examination ultimately confirmed the original cause of death, the act itself revealed a dark secret. The family was deeply fractured and suspicious about Tammy's final days. The world saw a peaceful passing, but behind the scenes her own children were so concerned about the man she was married to that they launched their own investigation to find the truth. Tammy's story is about a family searching for truth. But our next star's family had to fight over something else entirely, his massive fortune and a will that was a total mess. 3. Conway Twitty. Conway Twitty was the smoothest voice in country music. For decades, he was known as the high priest of country music, crooning romantic ballads like Hello Darlin' and It's Only Make Believe. He was a private person but had a massive and devoted fan base that loved his suave persona. On stage, everything was perfect. When he passed away suddenly in 1993 from an abdominal aortic aneurysm, the music world mourned a legend. His fans assumed that a man so meticulous with his career must have had all his affairs in order. As it turns out, that couldn't have been further from the truth. The crazy thing we learned after Conway was gone was that his estate was a complete and total disaster. He had a will, but he had tried to update it with handwritten notes, a move that is not legally recognized in many places. This left his massive estate, including the famous Twitty City tourist attraction, in a legal gray area. A bitter and painful battle erupted between his 4 adult children from his previous marriages and his widow, his third wife, Dee Henry. His children argued they were the rightful heirs to his legacy, while his widow claimed her share. The fight went on for years, tearing the family apart and costing them millions in legal fees. Eventually, his beloved Twitty City had to be sold off to pay the debts. The man with the smooth, controlled voice left behind a legacy of legal chaos that tarnished the perfect image he had built. Conway's legacy got tangled in legal papers, but our next star left behind a different kind of mess, one that involved a federal agency and millions in debt. 4. Dottie West. Dottie West was pure country sunshine, a nickname she earned from a famous Coca-Cola commercial and a hit song. She was a glamorous and beloved figure at the Grand Ole Opry, known for her big smile, flashy outfits, and warm, friendly personality. She was one of the first female country stars to win a Grammy, and her duets with Kenny Rogers made her a household name in the late 72nd and early 82nd. To her fans, she was the picture of success, a woman who had it all. Her tragic passing in a car accident in 1991 on her way to perform at the Opry was a shock to everyone. But the truly mind-blowing secret came out after she was gone. Behind the sequins and smiles, Dottie's life was in financial ruin. Believe it or not, the country superstar was deeply in debt. A series of bad investments, including ventures into oil and real estate, had gone south. On top of that, she had major issues with the IRS, who claimed she owed millions in back taxes. Her finances were in such a catastrophic state that she was forced to file for bankruptcy, and the government began seizing her assets, including her beautiful mansion and her cherished belongings. At the time of her fatal car crash, she wasn't just heading to another performance, she was desperately trying to get her life back on track and figure out a way to solve her financial nightmare. The public saw a star, but in reality, she was a woman under incredible pressure, facing the loss of everything she had worked for. Dottie's glamorous image hid a secret struggle. But our next star hid something even more fundamental, her entire personality. 5. Minnie Pearl. For over 50 years, Minnie Pearl was the most lovable character at the Grand Ole Opry. With her straw hat, complete with a dangling price tag of $1.98, and her booming catchphrase, "How WDE, I'm just so proud to be here." She was a comedy institution. She played the part of a simple, man-crazy country girl from the fictional town of Grinders Switch. Her stories about her brother and other quirky family members were a staple of country entertainment. Fans loved her because she seemed so genuine, so down-to-earth, and so hilariously clueless. She was Minnie Pearl, through and through, except she wasn't Paula. The most incredible thing people learned after her passing in 1996 was that the entire Minnie Pearl persona was an act. The woman behind the character was named Sarah Ophelia Colley Cannon, and she was the complete opposite of Minnie. Far from being a simple country girl, Sarah was a highly educated and sophisticated woman. She was a college graduate who had majored in theater production, a rarity for women in her time. She came from a well-to-do family in Centerville, Tennessee, and was a refined, intelligent, and cultured lady. She created the character of Minnie Pearl after meeting a real woman in rural Alabama and spent her entire career perfecting the role. For decades, millions of fans had no idea that the woman they saw on stage was a brilliant actress playing a part, a secret she kept so well that the truth was a genuine shock to many after she was gone. Minnie Pearl's secret was a different identity. But what if your secret was a premonition that your own life was about to end? 6. Patsy Cline. Patsy Cline had a voice that could break your heart. Timeless hits like Crazy and I Fall to Pieces made her one of the first true crossover stars from country to pop. She was a force of nature, a bold and confident woman who kicked down doors in a male-dominated industry. Her career was white-hot, but it was tragically cut short when she passed away in a plane crash in 1963 at just 30 years old. It was a devastating loss for music, a classic case of a star taken far too soon. The story gets truly chilling when you learn what her friends revealed after she was gone. It turns out Patsy had strong premonitions that she was not going to live a long life. It wasn't just a passing thought. It was a deep feeling she shared with several of her closest friends in the music business, including Dottie West and Loretta Lynn. Just a couple of weeks before her final flight, she reportedly told a friend, "Honey, I've had 2 bad ones. The third one will either be a charm or it'll kill me." She was referring to 2 serious car accidents she had survived. She even began giving away some of her personal belongings to friends, telling them to remember her by them. She even wrote her own will on a Delta Airlines napkin, a spooky sign of what was to come. Her friends didn't fully understand the weight of her words until after the tragic news broke. It was a haunting revelation that the singer of some of the saddest songs ever written seemed to know her own heartbreaking story was coming to an end. Patsy felt her time was running out. Our next star actually cheated his own tragic fate, but it haunted him for the rest of his days. 7. Waylon Jennings. Waylon Jennings was the ultimate outlaw, a true rebel who fought against the polished Nashville sound to create his own raw and honest music. With songs like Good-Hearted Woman and Luckenbach, Texas, he, along with Willie Nelson, defined the outlaw country movement. He lived life on his own terms and was known for his tough guy image and his battles with the industry and his own personal demons. He was a survivor who lived a long, full life until his passing in 2002. But one of the most incredible stories about him involves a secret he carried for over 40 years. Long before he was a country superstar, a young Waylon was playing bass in Buddy Holly's band. In February 1959, they were on a grueling winter tour. Holly decided to charter a small plane to get to the next gig instead of taking the freezing tour bus. Here's the kicker. Waylon was supposed to be on that plane. He gave up his seat to another performer, J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson, who was sick with the flu. Before the plane took off, Buddy Holly jokingly said to Waylon, "Well, I hope your old bus freezes up." Waylon jokingly replied, "Well, I hope your old plane crashes." Those words haunted him for the rest of his life. The plane did crash, taking the lives of Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper in what became known as the day the music died. Waylon rarely spoke of it publicly, but after he passed away, his writings and interviews with his family revealed the profound guilt and sorrow he carried with him every single day over that fateful, flippant comment. Waylon's life was changed by a fateful choice. For our next star, a fateful performance inside a prison cell changed not only his life, but the course of country music. 8. Merle Haggard. Merle Haggard was the poet of the common man. He wrote and sang songs for the working class, the forgotten, and the misunderstood. Hits like Okie from Muskogee and Mama Tried made him a legend. A huge part of his authentic persona was his past as a real-life outlaw. It was well known that he had been in and out of trouble as a young man and had even served time in the notorious San Quentin prison for burglary. That story was part of his brand. But the truly mind-blowing detail about his time in prison is something that many people didn't learn until much later. In 1958, while serving his sentence in San Quentin, a famous musical guest came to perform for the inmates, Johnny Cash. Merle was in the audience for that legendary concert. He watched the man in black walk on that stage, full of charisma and power, and it changed his life forever. Seeing Johnny Cash, another man who understood struggle and redemption, inspired Merle to get serious about his own music. He joined the prison's band and dedicated himself to songwriting. It was that specific concert that put him on the path to becoming one of country music's most important voices. The story of a future legend being inspired by a current legend inside the walls of a maximum security prison is one of the most incredible origin stories in all of music history. A detail that adds a whole new layer to his outlaw image. Merle found his future in prison, but our next legend literally had his body stolen after he passed away for one last wild adventure. 9. Gram Parsons. Gram Parsons is a name that true music nerds worship. Though he was never a massive mainstream star, he is widely credited as the father of country rock, or what he called cosmic American music. He was a member of the Byrds and the Flying Burrito Brothers before a short solo career. His influence on artists like the Eagles and Emmylou Harris is immeasurable. His life was short and chaotic, and he passed away from an overdose of horrible substances in a motel room near Joshua Tree National Park in 1973. He was only 26. But what happened after he passed is one of the most bizarre and legendary stories in rock and roll history. Graham's family wanted to have him buried in Louisiana, something Graham, a lover of the California desert, would have hated. But Graham had made a pact with his road manager, Phil Kaufman. They promised that whoever passed away first, the other would take their body to their favorite spot in Joshua Tree and cremate them. Kaufman decided to honor that promise. In an insane move, he and a friend dressed up as hearse drivers went to Los Angeles International Airport and told the staff there had been a change of plans. They actually stole Graham Parsons' casket. They drove it out to the desert and, as promised, tried to cremate him under the stars at Cap Rock. It was a clumsy, fiery, and illegal tribute to their friend. This wild act, born out of a drunken promise, became the stuff of legend, a final, chaotic chapter for an artist who lived his life outside the lines. Graham's ending was a bizarre pact between friends. The end for our next star was a different kind of tragedy, a battle with personal demons that his wife fought desperately to win. 10. Keith Whitley. Keith Whitley had one of the purest, most traditional country voices of his generation. In the late 1982nd, he was on a fast track to superstardom with powerful emotional hits like Don't Close Your Eyes and I'm No Stranger to the Rain. He had it all: the voice, the looks, and the respect of his peers. But he also had a lifelong battle with alcohol addiction. His tragic passing in 1989 at the age of 34 from alcohol poisoning was a devastating blow, robbing country music of a future legend. The heartbreaking part that became clearer after he was gone was the sheer desperation of his final days and how close he came to beating his demons. His wife, fellow country star Lorrie Morgan, spoke and wrote extensively about her frantic efforts to save him. She would tie his legs to hers in bed at night to keep him from sneaking out to drink. She would search the house, finding bottles hidden in cowboy boots and toilet tanks. Friends and family staged interventions. He would go through periods of sobriety and seem to be winning the fight, only to fall back into his old habits. On the weekend of his passing, he had been on a long bender. Lorrie had to leave for a concert tour and begged him not to drink. The details revealed a man who was deeply aware of his problem and wanted to stop, but was caught in a cycle he couldn't break. It wasn't just a story of a star who partied too hard. It was the tragic, intimate tale of a man losing a war with himself, a story that felt even more painful once the full picture emerged. Keith's story is a heartbreaking what if. But our next legend story is about a last-minute decision that left his family in turmoil for years. 11. Glen Campbell. Glen Campbell was the Rhinestone Cowboy, a beloved superstar whose charm and talent crossed over from country to pop. With a string of hits like Wichita Lineman and Galveston, and his own popular television show, he was one of the biggest stars of the 62nd and 72nd. In his later years, he bravely shared his battle with Alzheimer's disease with the world, even going on a farewell tour and filming a documentary about his experience. His passing in 2017 was a sad end to a brilliant career, but the story took a complicated turn after he was gone. The crazy thing we learned was about the intense family feud that had been simmering behind the scenes during his final years. After his passing, it was revealed that Glen's final will, signed in 2006, explicitly excluded 3 of his 8 children from any inheritance. 2 of those children, Travis and Debbie, had previously been in a public and painful legal battle with Glen's wife Kim Campbell over his care. They claimed Kim was preventing them from visiting their father in his Nashville long-term care facility. The fight became very public and very ugly. The revelation of the will added another layer of heartbreak to the story. It painted a picture of a family torn apart by the pressures of a long-term illness and financial disputes, a sad and messy final chapter for a man who brought so much joy to the world. Glen's final years were clouded by sadness and conflict. Our next star's final moments, however, were surprisingly peaceful and profound, with last words that will give you chills. 12. George Jones. George Jones, known as the Possum, had a voice that was considered the greatest in all of country music. He lived a notoriously wild life, earning the nickname No-Show Jones for missing hundreds of concerts due to his struggles with horrible substances. The stories of his antics were legendary, like the time he drove his riding lawnmower to the liquor store after his wife hid all the car keys. He was the ultimate tragic figure in country music, a man whose genius was matched only by his capacity for self-destruction. He eventually got clean and enjoyed a long career before passing away in 2013. Everyone expected his end to be as wild as his life, but the secret that came out was just how peaceful and strange his final moments were. His wife, Nancy, who was credited with saving his life, was with him in the hospital. For days, he had been weak and mostly unresponsive. Then, on his final morning, he suddenly opened his eyes wide. He looked at Nancy, and with a clear voice, he said something truly astonishing. He said, "Well, hello there. I've been looking for you. My name is George Jones." And then he closed his eyes and was gone. Nancy believes he was speaking to God. For a man who lived a life of chaos and inner turmoil, his final words were not of pain or regret, but of a calm, peaceful introduction. It was a beautiful and mysterious end that no one could have predicted. George Jones's final words were a peaceful mystery. But the Man in Black's biggest secret wasn't about his end, it was about something fiery he did that he tried to keep hidden for years. 13. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash, the Man in Black, was the definition of cool. His life was an open book of rebellion, redemption, and legendary music. From his famous prison concerts to his deep love for June Carter, his story is one of America's great myths. Everyone knew about his struggles with addiction and his outlaw image. But one of his wildest stories, one that he was not proud of and was kept relatively quiet for years, only became more famous after he was gone. It involved his truck, a national forest, and a bunch of endangered birds. Believe it or not, Johnny Cash was responsible for starting a massive forest fire. In 1965, during a period of heavy substance use, he went on a fishing trip in the Los Padres National Forest in California. His truck, which had a cracked oil pan, overheated and caught fire. The fire spread rapidly, burning over 500 acres of land. But here's the truly crazy part. The fire devastated a sanctuary for the California condor, one of America's rarest and most endangered birds. The blaze is believed to have wiped out 49 of the 53 condors that lived in the refuge. The federal government sued him, and he was forced to pay a massive fine. When he was questioned in court about the fire, he gave a classic Johnny Cash answer. When the judge asked him why he did it, he said, "I didn't do it, my truck did, and it's dead." So you can't question it. It was a disastrous event that showed just how out of control his life had become, a secret he was deeply ashamed of. Johnny's secret caused an accidental disaster. But our next star's secret was a creative one that helped shape one of Johnny's most famous songs. 14. June Carter Cash. June Carter Cash was the rock and the salvation of Johnny Cash. Born into the legendary Carter family, she was country music royalty from birth. She was a talented singer, comedian, and actress in her own right, but she is most famously remembered as the woman who stood by Johnny through his darkest days and inspired his greatest love songs, like "I Walk the Line." She was his loving wife and his muse. But here's a secret that, while known by some, was not fully appreciated by the general public until after both she and Johnny were gone. We all know the classic Johnny Cash song, "Ring of Fire," a song about the consuming power of love. For years, most people just assumed Johnny wrote it about his passionate and at the time forbidden love for June. The truth is, June Carter wrote the song. She co-wrote it with a songwriter named Merle Kilgore. She wrote the iconic lines, "Love is a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring," to describe her own feelings about falling for Johnny while they were both married to other people. Because it was such a personal and potentially scandalous admission at the time, and because Johnny's version became so famous, her role as the creative force behind it was often overlooked. It was only after her passing that her full creative genius and her essential role in crafting the very legend of Johnny Cash began to be celebrated as much as her role as his wife. June was the secret force behind the music. Our next star was a secret force in a different way, breaking down barriers that no one thought could be broken. 15. Charley Pride. Charley Pride had one of the smoothest, richest voices in country music history. With dozens of #1 hits like Kiss an Angel Good Mornin', he became one of the genre's best-selling artists. He was also the first black superstar in a genre that was, and largely still is, predominantly white. He was a trailblazer and an icon, inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame and beloved by fans of all races for his incredible talent. His journey to the top was known to be a challenge. But the crazy thing that many people didn't fully understand until after his passing in 2020 was the sheer cleverness and secrecy involved in launching his career. In the mid-1962, his record label was terrified that country radio DJs in the South would refuse to play his music if they knew he was black. So, for his first few singles, they came up with a secret plan. They sent the records to radio stations without a promotional photo. They wanted the DJs to play the music and let the audience fall in love with his voice before revealing his race. The plan worked. By the time most of the country realized the man singing those smooth country ballads was an African-American man from Mississippi, he was already a star. It was a bold gamble that speaks volumes about the obstacles he faced, a secret strategy that was necessary to break down one of the biggest barriers in American music. Charley had to hide his face to get heard. Our next star was known for his face and his fast cars, but he was hiding a constant secret battle with his own body. 16. Marty Robbins. Marty Robbins was a versatile and incredibly popular star, known for his story songs like the epic El Paso and his smooth ballads like A White Sport Coat and A Pink Carnation. Besides being a huge country music star, he was also a passionate and successful race car driver, competing in NASCAR for years. He seemed to have endless energy, always touring, recording, or getting behind the wheel of a stock car. He was the picture of vitality, living life in the fast lane quite literally. The secret that became much more apparent after he passed away from a heart attack at just 57 years old was the incredible physical pain he had been hiding for years. Marty had severe cardiovascular problems for a huge portion of his career. He suffered his first major heart attack in 1969 and underwent one of the first ever triple bypass surgeries. But that was just the beginning. He would go on to have more heart attacks and more surgeries, but he refused to slow down. He would sometimes check himself out of the hospital against medical advice to make it to a concert or a race. His fans saw the smiling, energetic performer, but they had no idea that he was often in constant discomfort and battling a body that was failing him. The secret wasn't a scandal, but one of immense personal courage and a sheer force of will to keep doing what he loved, no matter the physical cost.